Thought I'd take a minute this morning to do a little update. Nothing exciting has been happening on the boat itself for the last few weeks. It's been too cold and to do any serious work outside, and most of the work I want to do with epoxy is, like I said, it's just too cold to get it to cure in a reasonable amount of time. But work has been going on inside. Today I just took some of the, why don't you call them bulkheads or whatever, some of the plywood pieces out of the boat, or that had been out of the boat, lightly sanded them, and then started the process of recoating them with some spar varnish. Doesn't really need to be spar varnish for inside, but I've got some and like to see it get used up. One project that I've been working on that is kind of cool is a new Companionway hatch. Done all of the polycarbonate cutting and matched the old design. These are the wood parts that have had 2 coats of epoxy, clear epoxy put on them and then sanded down. Epoxy does not provide a really nice surface per se, so you end up sanding it an awful lot of it off. But the point of the epoxy is basically to solidify or plasticize the wood itself, so that when you put some UV varnish on it, it very likely, even over time, it won't damage the wood. Now the spar varnish itself will deteriorate and need to be redone, but the wood should be able to tolerate the weather itself. Might not look good after a while, but like I said, you're not going to see deterioration of the wood. And as I've probably commented before, I'm not using teak for any of the work that I'm doing. At $35 a board foot is just too rich for my blood. This is Babinga here, and it's a mere $10 a board foot, so I can build this stuff and replace it a few times before I have to catch up with the price of that teak. And it's just, frankly, this is as pretty, if not prettier, than any of the teak that we can buy these days. So what I did was sanded all these pieces with 120, which kind of removed a lot of the film and whatnot that build up over the years, and then coated it with 1 coat of the spar varnish. And what I'll do next when it's hard is lightly sand it with 220 and probably put a couple of more coats on there. And again, purpose is both appearance, but it also provides a nice surface that's easy to clean and whatnot. Other things that are going on, here's the stuff for the cabin sole. There's my screw up vacuum pump down there that I'm still trying to sell on Craigslist. Here are the polycarbonate parts for the Companionway hatch, also the port lights. And again, I don't want to install that stuff until I'm ready to do some painting on the cabin top, because I'd rather paint first and then install and seal the port lights after the fact, and that's kind of important. In fact, what's going to happen even with my hatchway, I'll probably end up having to wait to put it all together until when I am sealing that these port lights in, because I want to use that same ridiculously expensive sealer to put those wood pieces on the polycarbonate. Sound like I haven't done some other projects around here in the last few weeks. We've been joking. This piece is going to be a floor lamp, and we've been calling it Bronte because it kind of looks like a brontosaurus. Got a lot of materials. All my electrical stuff is here. I just need to go out and play in a cold boat and start labeling the old stuff and rerouting all the new lines, new wires. We'll rework that engine cover steps too. That's all going to get sanded and refinished, cleaned up. I think what I'll probably do is get my buffer out, and I think with some compound I can make the inside internal parts look pretty good, because they've never seen sunshine. It's just dirty and scuffed up, and so I think I can clean that up without having to repaint it. I could repaint it, but I don't need to add to the work list at this point in time. I just want, I need some projects done. And that's one of the reasons I'm kind of working on some of this plywood stuff and whatnot is, you know, it's nice to see projects get through the shop and get done, so you get some sense of completion, because a lot of this work on this boat is fairly serious, and you know, it's going to take time, and not to mention some physical effort. So it's good to get these kinds of projects done, so that, like I said, you get some sense of accomplishment. All these parts, like I said, all need to be cleaned up and refinished. It'd be tempting to do some more fancy woodwork, but I can come back and revisit any of these things down the road and show off my fancy woodworking. But for now, I need it to just look better and function, so we'll go from there. I think I've got some work to do in the rear bilge area, and as soon as I can confidently work at probably above 50 degrees, I'll do that work. And then it's going to be build that cabin sole, because that's seriously important to the rebuilding process. And then I still have a whole half of a hull to grind off. I've been watching the moisture meter on the ground off side. In a few places it has changed slightly, but I think you'd die of old age waiting for the hull to dry out just by being out in the open air. Now maybe during the summertime that might change and accelerate, but my plan is as soon as we get a little warmer, I'm going to use my infrared propane heater to locally heat up parts of that hull with the vacuum on it to try to dry that core out. One thing that occurred to me, I'm using this West Marines spar varnish, and I'm not sure if everyone's aware of this, but with polyurethanes, highly recommend you don't paint the stuff directly out of the can, or as thick as it is directly out of the can. I like to cut it at least 20-25%, maybe more. And I also like to use, rather than mineral spirits, I like to use turpentine. It seems like it flashes off faster, dries faster, and brushes on better. So like I said, cut it, and if you can, use turpentine rather than mineral spirits, and I think you get better results. I'm not sure how clear this is, but what I've done with some of my supplies, both the fiberglass, this is, what do you want to call this? This is the bleeder cloth here, and I think that's some, what do we got, 10-ounce cloth back there, peel ply, and this needs to go up and hang up. It's just way easier to work with if you have an easy way to both store it and get it down to cut it. So what I've done is I have some overhead storage that I use for wood, and I just hung it up there, and using some PVC pipe and some cable clamps type affair. Nothing fancy. I just need it to get out of the way and be able to cut it easily to work with it. I just did a shop improvement project after years and years of just using the big compressor and taking a single hose line off the compressor to do all the work that I wanted to do with the air. I finally broke down and got a much bigger regulator and moisture trap. And then all that blue line, that's actually 1-inch line, and I now have 3 new drops in my shop. I should say 2 in the shop and 1 out by the boat, so that when I do start painting, my compressor was always capable of the CFM that is required for running both HVLP and now the pressurized sprayer that I have. But when I started looking at it, I'm going through all kinds of 1/4-inch fittings, and collectively that means you're not getting the kind of CFM out at the end of your hose that you might have had back at the compressor. So all that blue line, it was a fun project installing that stuff, but again, now I have a new drop outside the shop next to the boat that will have the high flow that I want when I get ready to do the painting of the boat that I intend to do. And now I have a new drop by the door. What a concept. I can't believe that I've gone 20 years in this shop without doing something about this, but oh well. Now we fixed it, and we get to move on. Recently, I was up to my brother's boat building plant, and he was showing me how they go about laminating their boats, and showing me all the materials that they use. And one that I think is really interesting, and I wanted to point out, is this stuff. It's a mat that's about 1/4 of an inch thick. It's, I don't know if the camera can pick it up very well, but it's micro balloons. So it's really light, and what my brother is telling me is they like to use this between the layers of woven roving. And the reason is that it keeps the coarse woven roving from printing through to the next layer, and it builds up the thickness of the laminate very dramatically without increasing weight. So that 1/4 inch with multiple layers of, or stacks of woven roving, this stuff, and more woven roving can really build up a thick laminate structure, and without a big weight gain. Some of this stuff probably a lot of people have seen. This is, I think this one's called, this might be the Kusa, and it's a high density material, and so I just was ripping him off for any pieces that he could afford to live without. This is what modern boats are cored with, and the advantage is this stuff never will become waterlogged or whatever. So I've got a bunch of that I can use. This is the high density material with a glass already laminated to it. And apparently for really high strength areas, and this stuff is both heavier and really dense. But I got just endless pieces that I'll get to use, and I suspect I'm going to need a bunch, and probably way more than this. But and I'm not sure I won't use balsa. I mean, balsa is fine if you've done the work to keep moisture from getting to it, and that means in my case, once I've done my drying process, I probably will be laminating on. I haven't decided how much or how heavy the cloth will be. It kind of depends on how much slicing and dicing I have to do on the hull, but it could end up being 10-ounce material that I laminate back on that hull. In which case the epoxy is resin itself is a serious water barrier, and at that point in time, if the through holes aren't leaking, your water problems ought to be minimal, and if you have water intrusion, it's going to be through any stupid holes that you have on the inside of the boat, or maybe through a through hole. But anyway, going down that path, you gotta love this mess that's sitting around here. There's new hatches to go on the boat. Those are the Lumar 10s and a big 60 flush mounts. I think it's important that you get flush mounts, I guess, or you'll end up trimming off that flange. What else is interesting? Some nice blue cushions. Bilge stuff. Gonna go to a smooth walled bilge. This is for the big whale pump. And it just goes on and on